You're listening to the 49 Carats podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats podcast. I'm your host, Steph. It is Wednesday, March 13th, and today is the very first day of free agency. Monday marked the first day of legal tampering. We got a lot of word on a lot of deals happening. This is the day where most of them became official. And of course, we saw some new moves be made, including by our favorite team, the 49ers. So joining me to talk about those moves and just look at the lay of the land, what the 49ers have done so far in free agency, is Coach Dezi. How are you doing today, Dezi?
It's Wacky Wednesday. I mean, this has been such an exciting week. I don't even know. I feel like when they say carousel, that's legit how I feel. I just feel like one thing comes out and I'm like, whoa. And then the next thing comes out and it's just this nice little round and round, trading up, trading here and all the things. I'm here for it.
There's a little bit of panic. There's a little bit of, oh, okay. All right, cool. Just back and forth with that. It's a lot of overreactions. And then, of course, there's a lot of excitement in all of this as well. So let's just talk about, there's more than wacky week, says Rick. It's been a crazy week for the 49ers and across NFL. Let's just look back at what has happened so far. And as we do it, we'll pause on what has happened in the last day or so to give that some discussion. So as far as the 49ers who are returning, the 49ers brought back some guys, quarterback Brandon Allen, guard Ben Barch, and safety and special teams ace George Odom. And there were a couple guys who were either extended or restructured their contracts. Fred Warner and Kyle Juszczyk, thank you for your service for giving the 49ers some cap space. And then Colton McKivitz got a 2-year extension. It is technically a 1 year because I think he was still under contract for 1 year. So now he's under contract for the next 2 years till 2025. Which probably doesn't really excite a whole lot of people, but I mean, I think it just means that the 49ers maybe want some competition at the tackle spot, and they do want Colton McKivitz to be part of that. They're not putting all their eggs in one free agent to do that. But yeah, Colton McKivitz will be back with this team. And as far as tendered players, Jawan Jennings, he got the second round tender, as we've been kind of mentioning here. As far as the players who are returning, Dezi, there isn't anything that's super surprising here, I guess, or notable. But which one of these do you like, or maybe don't like?
Well, I didn't freak out over McKivitz, so I just feel like they're just. I forget if I even heard this somewhere, but I feel like the front office is just loading up because they don't want to be in a situation in the draft where they're desperate for a certain position. So they might as well just fill spots. And then, it's extra credit if you happen to draft that golden guy off the draft. So I mean, I'm taking that with a grain of salt and, trying to bring down any potential hysteria on my end. But, I'm okay. I don't think McKivitz was some random terrible person that caused a lot of badness to the line, but he wasn't someone that was an overwhelming standout. So, it's something for a foundational piece, a rotational piece. Like you said, let's make it a competition. I'm here for that always. George Odom, great. Obviously, I feel like he's impressive and someone that we needed to keep. And of course, Brandon Allen, I mean, we need someone back there since we lost
Sam Darnold.
Already
forgot his name.
I know. We used him so much.
He was here for one season. You already forgot his name. But Dezi, I do like what you said about Colton McKivitz because I think it's so true. While people aren't thrilled about the fact that he was extended, again, I think it just emphasizes that this team doesn't want to go into the draft feeling like they need anything. And the way that it's been shaping up so far throughout free agency, they really they're taking care of some of their needs now, except for offensive line, which some would have argued is their biggest need. But they're kind of setting themselves up for the draft to be able to get some of the guys that they potentially like. And I did want to talk about this just for a second. The Titans did make a huge deal just now for Calvin Ridley. I believe it's about 90 million or 92 million, 4 years, $92 million deal. That is massive. Titans making some moves. We've seen the Texans make a bunch of moves. We've seen the Commanders with Adam Peters out there making a bunch of moves. 49ers guys out in the wild, out in their new jobs. They're making a killing out there. Like, they're doing a great job, I think. So it's been pretty fun to see. I'm of course a fan of the Niners, but I'm a fan of some of the things they've been doing out there. I'm just saying. So if you see me rooting for the Texans, at some point in the season, that'll be my second team. Don't get mad at me. I'm just saying, don't get mad.
That's all right. I think I posted that on your X feed where you said something about maybe the best thing we got out of this was friends or meeting new friends or something. And I was like, can I be friends with D'Amico? Because he is straight up building things down there. So
He is. My dude is
Yeah.
working. The
Yeah, he
way
is.
that he's turned that team around in such a short amount of time, I think is really impressive. And I mean, hey, he learned from one of the best. The 49ers did quite a job as well, turning, this team around. So, yeah, we'll just have to see. Okay, just really quickly, because this wasn't something I was planning to talk about, but just some news just broke. There's a lot happening right now. So if we do kind of it's Wacky Wednesday, right? So if we
It's
veer
Wacky
away,
Wednesday.
and talk about some breaking news that just happened, forgive us, a bit of a scatterbrain, but safety Rashawn Jenkins, who played with the Jaguars last, he had a visit with the 49ers yesterday. He had a visit with the Seahawks today. He just signed with the Seahawks. So not going to be happening with the 49ers, unfortunately. So 49ers still looking for some safety veteran depth. But yeah, we'll keep you posted. And thank you, 49er Media, for bringing that to my attention in the comments, as well as the Calvin Ridley signing as well. So yeah, there's a lot happening on Twitter and in the NFL world. So we're going to keep you guys updated with all of the latest. Let's talk about some of the 49ers departures, because there's some notable ones here as well. And as always, there's a lot that happens here. This is why the 49ers have basically, they can churn out the comp picks, right? They get them every single year. This is why, because every season they have a number of guys who leave in free agency. This season has been no different. So you have cornerback Isaiah Oliver, who went to the Jets. You have Charlie Warner, tight end, who went to the Falcons. Clelin Ferrell, who went to the Commanders. Shout out Adam Peters again. You have Javon Kinlaw going to the Jets. Shout out to Robert Saleh over there. And Sam Darnold, who Dezi's name,
Who?
Yeah, exactly. She doesn't even remember his name. And then he went to the Vikings. And then Matt Pryor, offensive lineman this past season, he went to the Bears. But I think the biggest departure of all, and he has yet to sign with another team, but the 49ers have officially released him, defensive tackle Eric Armstead. That's pretty big, right? And we've known about this for a couple of days now, that this was a likely scenario with Eric Armstead. Today, just a few hours ago, it became official. So I mean, Dezi, what are your thoughts on Armstead leaving?
Best of luck to him. He's one of my favorite 49ers. He is a great guy, big heart, big teddy bear. I follow him on social media. Just love everything about this guy. You hate to lose a guy like that. But as we had pointed out last week, there's been some injuries, some, missing games over the last 2 years. And like I had said last week, with that knee surgery that he had, maybe that's the thing that will, catapult him into a more consistent year next year. But, the way that our D line, as you can see, there's multiple people that have left and exited our D line, and we continue to have problems. Although I would argue that I'm not sure that he was a true problem other than just lack of games, being able to be available for games. But in the postseason, he showed up big time and fought through that pain and injury.
Yeah.
So I definitely hate to leave a guy like, have a guy like Eric Armstead leave the team, but best of luck to him. And those are some big shoes to fill, literally and figuratively. So we'll see what happens
For
there.
sure. For sure. And yeah, just the several losses on the defensive line so far, it became a huge need for the 49ers in free agency. And in a moment, we'll talk about how they've addressed those so far. But, Eric Armstead had every right to feel upset, about being asked to take a significant pay cut, which is what we heard. He was asked from the team. And so, especially Dezi coming off that Super Bowl, coming off that playoff run where he played fantastic, by the way, and playing through a meniscus injury, right? Like that's no small thing. And so he did that for the team. He didn't have to go out there, but he did it for the team. And for reasons of their own, the team had to look at the cost that a lot of these players are taken up, as well as their contributions. And yes, I mean, Eric Armstead is a great player, but you talk about the injury factor, and plantar fasciitis, as we know, is something that does linger. It doesn't, go away necessarily. I mean, it can always flare up, right? So I think that was maybe the hesitancy with them wanting to go forward with Eric Armstead, if it came at the $17 million that he was due to get this season, right? Which I think for the 49ers is also more than fair. So yeah, best of luck to Eric Armstead. I have a feeling he's going to be all right. I just some of the teams that I've heard are interested in him. I believe Lions, Bengals, and I'm sure maybe the Texans, maybe the Jets, want to involve him in as well. I think he's going to find a pretty good landing spot. And the Bills, I think, is another name that I heard as well. So, yeah, Eric Armstead, he's going to be all right. So best of luck to him. And thank you for your contributions as a 49er. But, yeah, because there are so many guys that have left in free agency, on the defensive line, it became a quick need for the 49ers. But the 49ers have quickly addressed it. And so pretty much all of the free agency signings and or trades that they have made so far, all their moves have been towards the defense, and 4 of the 5 have been to the defensive line. So once again, a huge point of emphasis for this 49ers team. The first move was Leonard Floyd, picking him up. Then Yetur Gross-Matos. Sorry if I don't get that. I'm just gonna chalk it up to being Wacky Wednesday. I can't get names straight today.
I can't remember quarterbacks' names, so
Yeah, there you go. I mean, it's just that kind of day for us. But he's a defensive end, defensive tackle. So I like him because it gives a team some versatility as to where he can line up. And then you have defensive tackle Jordan Elliott. Shout out Splash Cousin on Twitter, the real Jordan Elliott as well. If you know, you know. And then linebacker Eric Kendricks, who most recently played with the Chargers this past season, but was previously with the Vikings as well. That should shore up their linebacker group. That'll do, right? And then the biggest move of all was the trade that they made today for defensive tackle Malik Collins from the Texans, in which they gave up a 7th round pick. Just a 7th round pick. This is crazy, Dezi. Like, I love, yeah, right. Apparently,
my best friend
D'Amico owes Kyle some favors, I guess. So I guess that's why it only took a 7th. So thank God. But yeah, I must say the moves that came within the last day, which was Eric Kendricks and this trade for Collins, my favorite day of the past week so far as the moves that the 49ers have made.
Yes. First, I want to say and make a request to Eric Armstead. I would love a video of his paycheck and the taxes that come out at whatever state he ends up in. That's just a side note because very fascinated. I was really intrigued by that. But in terms of this, I would agree, Steph. Like the first day had me a little There was all these exciting things, and I was like, wah. Like I just wasn't. Like it was like, okay, like so much anxiety about what we need, the positions, what's out there. You know, I'm watching ESPN. They got their board up. Here's what's filled. Things are getting taken. I'm like, what the hell are we waiting on? Like, what are we doing? and then boom, in comes, like you said, Eric Kendricks and Malik Collins. And I think these are some great additions. This is kind of what I was looking forward to. I'm excited about them. I'm excited particularly about Malik because he's coming from Texas, coached by D'Amico Ryan's defense. I think that's going to translate well coming to San Francisco. He had a rough start to his career. He had multiple foot injuries. So we're trading Eric Armstead. We're getting a guy who had fractures in both of his feet. I think they both ended up having some kind of surgery on him. I think I wrote
How long ago was that?
So 2016, he broke his right foot right as he came in. Then I think the following year, he had some kind of like surgery. I feel like it was the same foot for some kind of inflammatory. They didn't really diagnose it. It was some kind of inflammatory reaction or something. So I'm not quite sure what that was. But then I think the year after that, he fractured his other foot. So it was, I think, the right foot, then it was the left foot, and he had to have surgery on that. So everything was kind of done with him by 2018. I think he had like a knee injury somewhere in there, but you can see his production picked up since then. Like it was just kind of like a stutter step, and he's become a lot more productive in the past couple of years. And so to your point, 7th round, what? Because I think this guy is just about to hit a good stride, and I would love for that to happen in 2024.
I think the 49ers, as they often do, like they got some guys who I think are upside. Like there's a lot of upside to it, and I think one can argue potentially even an upgrade. If you look at Leonard Floyd and you say, well, he's a Clennon Farrell. I always say Clennon, and it's Cleland. Cleveland. There you go. That's how I need to say it. Cleveland. I have a hard time with that, clearly.
Wacky Wednesday.
Farrell, I'll just say that. So if you look at Floyd and you look at that being the replacement for Farrell, then that's an upgrade, right? Like that's an upgrade. And then if you look at Gross Matos and you see him being the, that one's different, like because he could play two different spots. I think he would be mostly on the inside, but not sure. He'll definitely be part of the rotation for either end or tackle spots. So I'm not really sure what replacement he would be directly, but I like it anyway. And then Jordan Elliott being the direct replacement to Kevin Givens, who was a little further down in the depth chart, but still part of the rotation. Less snaps, of course, but I think that's an upgrade as well, because this past stint that Kevin Givens had with the 49ers, it wasn't like the first time, right? So I think Jordan Elliott brings some upside. He's young. That's the one thing with Gross Matos and Elliott and even Collins that I really like. They're very young. And I think that's what the 49ers are kind of banking on. Like, hey, these guys haven't really hit their stride yet. Let's see what they can do with our scheme. And another thing I wanted to talk about as well is, as Golden Dragon number 5 points out here in the comments, Brandon Staley handpicked defensive chess pieces. This is interesting because I think like we weren't really expecting Brandon Staley to have a large say in the defense or just like what they did defensively. But if you look at some of the guys they've picked up, like Leonard Floyd has experience being an outside linebacker, right? And even Gross Matos has that experience as well. That makes it interesting because then you're like, Are they thinking about running some kind of hybrid? And in that case, then Brandon Staley has a little bit more influence than maybe we originally thought. So that's another thing to, I guess, keep in mind with all of these, pickups as well. Eric Hendricks, was with the Chargers this past season as well. So it seems very intentional, some of the guys that they've chosen so far. Now, if you feel like there's a greater influence by Brandon Staley on the defense, do you like that, Desi, or are you like, does it scare you a little bit?
So, okay, so I didn't get to be on the show the week after that happened because I had a lot to say about Staley because you had asked me before how I felt. We didn't know. We had just interviewed him and I was kind of like, it's probably just a professional courtesy, yada, yada. Had no thoughts. I mean, when they came forward and said, hey, we're going to bring him on as like we're not sure role, like an assistant role or whatever. I was kind of like, that is brilliant. And I was kind of upset at myself for not thinking about that because that is freaking brilliant. Like one of our complaints as fans, and especially I think after the Super Bowl, is that we felt like Kyle was he was spread too thin. He was doing way too much on both sides of the ball. And this is a great opportunity to have somebody come in that he could trust, that will, he can delegate to and have with confidence, know that it's going to be done the way he wants it done. Right. So that'll free him up. So, and with them pulling up someone who's not used to play calling, has never been a defensive coordinator before, it's good to have someone that can help him figure this out and kind of do this. So I like the collaboration I'm seeing. And it's interesting that you said that these individuals can also swing as kind of a linebacker role, because I kind of saw that as I started looking at these players and I was like, interesting. But I couldn't have explained it as eloquently as you did just now, but it is interesting. I also still, I mean, there's a lot of Kyle Shanahan non-supporters out there. And I will say, I do think this man is brilliant and I trust him in his decision-making, right? Like everything he does is so calculated that I don't feel like Brandon Staley is going to go rogue and do something that isn't completely thought out 100% by Kyle Shanahan. So I think I like the setup so far.
Yeah, I mean, I think you raise a great point that every single decision under Kyle Shanahan goes through Kyle Shanahan, right? So even just these new wrinkles that we're talking about on defense, and I'm open to new wrinkles and maybe some hybrid defense. What I'm not open to is a full like defensive scheme change, right? That would be too much. I don't think Kyle would want that either. So I think there's a certain, I don't know, level that we'll see. There's small bits here and there. And I think that'll just hopefully help the 49ers with being able to confuse offenses, confuse quarterbacks, things like that. You never really know what you're going to get. So,
yeah, I feel like splashes would be good, not necessarily a complete 180, but a little splash here and there of a little something different.
Yeah.
Why not? Try it out.
A little dash.
A sprinkle.
Little Salt Bay dash,
I mean, if they're cooking, they're cooking. They need different things.
There you go. You need some seasoning in there. Let's go. Not enough seasoning last season, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I'm definitely welcome to some of those changes and seeing what that looks like. But I'm happy. I'm happy with the way that they've addressed the defensive line, because like I said, I think there were some worries for me about how they would do it. I think we expected the 49ers to make a big splash. We were told as much, and I almost feel a little gaslit because it didn't happen, right? So it's like, hey, where's the splash signing we were promised, huh?
Yeah.
And so what they did instead with addressing edge, because we kind of thought that would be the spot they would bring in, big name guy like Danielle Hunter. They kind of split it between two guys, instead of a 20 million plus salary here, take, an average of 10 million between two players, right? And two players that we've kind of said are upgrades over, their previous options that they had there. And I'd say like last season, the 49ers kind of had this 2A, 2B at the edge spot opposite Bosa, right? Like they had two guys who there wasn't like one main starter guy. So I think maybe they feel comfortable doing that again and just like upgrading who they had, going younger with who they have. And yeah, I really love this. The Malik Collins, he's a great pass rusher from the interior. He has a mean spin move. Like if you watch anything about Collins, like you'll see a bunch of spin moves. He could take on double teams. I think that's great. And then going back to linebacker with Eric Kendricks, the reason I like that, he is on the older side, right? I believe he's going to be 30 or 31 this upcoming season. But we needed someone to bring in while Dre Greenlaw's going through his rehab of his Achilles, right? So I think Eric Kendricks, with the experience that he has, with the familiarity that he has with Staley, and then, just the experience that he has in general, I think it'll help, just to be a Band-Aid until Greenlaw comes back.
Yeah, I have some stats. I compared side by side Eric Kendricks to Dre Greenlaw just last season. I only took last season's numbers. So solo tackles for Kendricks was 79. Dre had 75. Combined 117 to Dre's 120. Assisted is 38 to Dre's 45. Interceptions was the big glaring difference, which Dre had 4. This was not including postseason. This was only regular season. And Eric had 0. Fumbles forced and recovered was kind of a wash. And sacks, Eric had 3.5 sacks and Dre had 1.5. So interestingly, it looks like maybe Kendricks is a better like push, help the line out a little bit. He's got, some good reads there. And aside as tackling, he's just as good of a tackler as Greenlaw. But maybe if we're looking at that cornerback position now to help more in the secondary, could be interesting. Something that I just kind of was thinking about actually just now. So brain engaged finally. It only took about 30 minutes for my brain to engage today, guys. Sorry.
She's here, people. She's here. Welcome. Dezi. Yeah, welcome. And just to go back to Collins, because this just came to my mind as well. He's due to get about, I believe, around $8 million this season, which, if you're looking at that, that's way less than what Eric Armstead would have gotten, even if he were to have taken a pay cut, right? So I think you get younger, you get a few $1 million cheaper. And then how about the durability factor of some of these signings, Dezi? Because a lot of people brought that up with some of these guys. Leonard Floyd, for example, hasn't missed a game since 2017. Like that was really impressive. And so Gross Matos as well, I don't think has missed a whole lot in his career. So it seems like that is maybe a point of emphasis, right, with some of these signings.
Yeah. And for those who don't know, I'm a physician assistant. I've been practicing medicine for over 20 years, including emergency medicine, orthopedics, urgent care, that type of thing. So that's actually the first thing I look at, because I look at the injuries. That's my forte. That's my little contribution to the faithful. And you're right. Other than what I've already discussed with Malik Collins, they're really, actually, this is looking great, right? As far as in terms of injury. So no, these are great players, very good, solid physical attributes that, minimal history of injuries. So I'm excited about this. Yeah,
I think it definitely speaks to something that they want. they want health to be on their side. And that's important too, because if they hope to make a run in 2024, I know how difficult it is to get back to the Super Bowl after having just made it the season before, and especially if you're the losing team. But I'll say this, like, I think a big part of that is the health factor, and the 49ers, relatively speaking, like they had some good health luck last season, right? And so maybe trying to recreate that a little bit with some of the guys
until the Super Bowl.
Then it all kind of like came crashing down. It was like when you play Jenga, like they're just pulling like, blocks each and every game, and then it just became too much. The tower came tumbling down all in one game. It was quite the scene. But I think maybe that's something that they want to make sure is they're insulating themselves with health and guys who historically have had good health. So that I definitely like that aspect of it.
I do too, 100%.
Corey Soto says the Niners splash move is going to be trading Brandon Ayuk. I see it clearly. Well, I don't know about that.
Mariah's going to come for you, Corey. Mariah's coming for you.
Mariah. Yeah. I mean, look, I'm not saying that it can't happen or that it won't. I see it as unlikely. But what is interesting, and I want to talk to you about this too, Dezi, is like earlier today, we did see this report come in. And I guess it was Jason La Canfora who said this on the radio or something like that. And so I'm going to read this tweet off. It's from a radio station. With Ravens creating cap room, some of it could be earmarked for a wide receiver. We heard they reached out to San Francisco about Debo availability. That's a no, at least for now. And they're watching Chargers wide receivers as well. So basically, the Ravens called, seeing if Debo was available. San Francisco said no. Are you surprised that they would have said no just outright? Or do you think like there was some discussion of what it could potentially cost, and that's where the no maybe came from?
They hung up on him.
So you don't think they'd be interested in any type of trade with Debo at all?
Listen, Debo just changed his number. I thought that's what this is about. Debo is now number 1, and he's Samuel Sr. So for those of you who got a 19 jersey, you might need to trade it in. So I don't think that. I think that's the only jersey change we're going to see from Debo. But if I'm putting my injury hat on, he has, suffered a lot of soft tissue things. He has missed time the past couple seasons. He does get banged up. Part of that is who he is as an athlete and his production and what everybody values him for. I mean, good job to the Ravens for trying to look at that, because they just got King Henry. I mean, Jesus, what a just aggressive. I mean, they're building this incredible offense, which they're going to need to, because they just lost a really good linebacker. Patrick Queen is gone. So I am surprised a little bit by this, but if we're being honest, Debo's getting a little older. He's getting a little banged up. At some point, it's going to happen. Do I think they're ready for that right now? Don't think so. And I think Kyle uses him and relies on him too much in the offense to let him go.
It wouldn't be so surprising to me if we saw a trade for Debo eventually. Right. And he does have an out in his contract after this season, so in 2025. So I think that's more likely with him. But if we're in the discussion of, and we've already had this talk, right? Like early in the offseason, we talked about this, of if it came between trading either one of Debo or Ayuk, my choice would be Debo, just because of what you highlighted, the injuries. I think also his age. I mean, he's not going to get any younger, and those injuries could maybe even increase as he gets older, right? So for me, I know Brandon Ayuk is due to get a big payday, but if I'm just looking at who's going to contribute the most in the next few years, my money would literally be on Brandon Ayuk. So,
I agree.
Yeah. But we'll see. I wouldn't rule out, like I said, I can't rule out anything, but I don't think the 49ers necessarily need to trade Brandon Ayuk either. Like, they're not desperate for picks, unless they felt like they really like to tackle. They can only get like within the first 15 picks or something like that, between like picks 10 and 15. I think that would be like a sweet spot for like literally day one starting tackle, right? If you want someone to be able to compete for Colton McKivitz and beat Colton McKivitz. But you know, I don't know. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. I still think the 49ers could swing a trade up, especially because you see the 11 picks they had. You see that they're addressing needs in free agency. So suddenly, you know, you're going into the draft and you're like, we don't need all that much. We just need, you know, to replenish the offensive line now. Let's do it in the draft. Let's use some of these 11 picks that we have to do that and move up and get a sure thing. So they have options. They're giving themselves options with some of the moves they've made so far, and I think that's why I like when you look at all of the moves they've made, who they have let walk, who they've brought in. I think they're setting themselves up just fine to be able to take best player available, and hopefully for us, that's an offensive tackle, right? But we'll see. They have options.
Agree.
All right. One of the other things I think to kind of talk about is, Joey Bosa is a discussion right now. He has been a discussion for the 49ers for a couple months now, you know, why not? So he might get cut by the Chargers. They've already cut Mike Williams, a wide receiver, and there are reports that Khalil Mack is likely to stay. So that leaves Keenan Allen and Joey Bosa as potentially, you know, being guys that the Chargers cut. They're going to have to cut probably one or two more guys. So who they decide, I guess, is the question. And Friday, this upcoming Friday, so the 15th, Joey Bosa's has a roster bonus due of $7 million. So they pretty much have to make a decision before then, right? Otherwise that, you know, he'll get that money and there's no point in cutting them to save cap. And then Keenan Allen, he has a $5 million roster bonus due on Sunday. So, yeah, as far as Joey Bosa goes, look, I'll say this. I think it's unlikely, one, because of the moves that the 49ers have already made, unless Joey Bosa is looking to play for cheap. And I don't think he is, because he is a Bosa after all, and they go for whatever money they can get, you know, as they should. But at the same time, you know, he's dealt with a number of injuries throughout his career. I don't think it'd be very wise for the 49ers to pay him, you know, a certain amount. There's a certain amount I don't think the 49ers would be willing to pay. And just my hunch, I think Bosa would want more than that amount. So that's why I don't think it's likely.
Yeah. And honestly, I'm not a fan of it. I'm a mom of two boys. Like, sometimes it's not worth the drama to have two brothers on the same
like
team.
Fighting in the locker room.
Yeah.
Arguing.
I'm like, I don't know. Like, you know, and that's one aspect, but the other aspect you already spoke about. I mean, his injury list is quite extensive. Lots of concussions. They had that groin tear that I think required surgery. He's just coming off of was it a pec tear that he had last year? Was that what he had last year? I mean, he's banged up, man. He is really banged up. So, and that's not what I want on the other side of Nick Bosa. I'm sorry. I want someone who's young, hungry, aggressive, quick, you know, all those things. So,
yeah, it's, I know it would be some storybook, you know, outcome, but unlikely. And that's why those kind of stories are only in books, because it's unlikely. It makes for good reading, but not always a good reality. So yeah, Joey Bosa, I don't think is going to happen. What I think the 49ers will be doing going forward is, you know, I would expect 1 to 2, maybe more final tier of edge rushers who come in, reclamation projects, you know, to round out the defensive line, and that kind of be it. I do think they're probably in the market for a veteran safety, you know, as Rayshawn Jenkins was one of the guys who they had brought in for a workout. And so I think that's still on the table for them to bring a safety in. And then I think they bring in a corner, another corner as well. So, and And as far as offensive linemen, I hope they bring Feliciano back, but we haven't heard anything about him. The guard market has been absolutely insane, though. So it doesn't surprise me that Feliciano's probably just putting his feelers out there, and hopefully, he'll come back to the 49ers, because I think that they could potentially get him for some good value. And I think he showed that he's a good enough starter. I think that they wouldn't deem right guard a need if he came back.
I think it's enough to fill a spot, right? Like, just
Yeah.
have it there. Again, who knows what this is going to look like by the time we get to the draft, let alone past the draft, and letting them all fight it out over the summer. But no, I mean, I think you're right. I would expect him to come back, but it is interesting that it's been so quiet on that end. So we'll see.
We shall see. And just before we go here, just wanted to update you guys, as I always do, on my draft sheet. We've got another top 30 visit report that came through this morning from Ryan Fowler of the Draft Network. He says that Oregon cornerback Jamal Hill, he is slated to have a top 30 visit with the 49ers. The 49ers, interesting enough, had 2 scouts at Oregon's pro day yesterday, and I was like, who could they be interested in? Well, Jamal Hill, at least one of the guys that they would definitely be interested in, because of that top 30 visit. That's usually a good sign. The 49ers do usually draft a few of those guys that they bring in. So, and then also cornerback Chow Smith Wade out of Washington State is said to have a top 30 visit with the team as well, according to Justin Moreno from the Draft Network. And Smith Wade had a formal interview with the 49ers at the Combine, and he met with all 32 teams at the Senior Bowl as well. So, popular guy, and this would then be his 3rd time, having some sort of meeting with the 49ers that we know of. So I think that probably bodes well for him. Definitely shows some interest. So yeah, there's some movement happening there. It's not all just free agency news happening, but for now, that's all the news that we have. And I'm sure there'll be more in the coming days. So make sure you guys keep it locked. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Like this video if you haven't yet. Don't forget to follow Dezi as well. Dezi, you want to remind people where they can find you?
Yeah, hang out with me on Twitter. It's so much fun there. Coach_Dezi. I'm also on Instagram as Coach Dezi. And then I also have my podcast that will heat back up here as the NFL season starts to kick back up. Girlfriends and Football on YouTube.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Dezi, for joining me today. Thank you to everyone that tuned in. But for now, have a good rest of your Wednesday, folks. Peace.